What do Juuse Saros and Cale Makar both need to do differently next season? We're going to talk about that and much more on a special Central Division crossover with Chris and Kyle from the Locked On Avalanche.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this special Monday episode with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everyday listeners who tune in each and every weekday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support, and we love that we get to spend a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and in a moment, I will be joined by my partner in crime, Emma Lingen, and Chris and Kyle, hosts of the Locked On Avalanche podcast. On today's special Central Division crossover episode, we're going to talk about the different approaches Colorado and Nashville took in free agency. We're going to give our best predictions for the Central Division, and friends, we are going to talk about what the heck happened with Ryan Johansen. Before we dive into all of that with Chris and Kyle, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs have wrapped up, the sports stop sportsin' like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Today from Locked On Avalanche, I'm Chris Maselli, and with me, as always, is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan, and joining us from Locked On Predators, Ann Kimmel. You know her if you're in Avalanche Nation. We've done crossovers with the Preds before, and she's always been around. Newcomer is Emma. Is it Lingen? Am I pronouncing that last name correctly?
Yes, you nailed it. Well done.
I love it. Okay, because mine is not the easiest last name. So if I can get somebody else's right, we're already off to a good start. So welcome to Emma. I mean, you've been doing the show with Ann for a couple months now, right?
Couple months. Yeah. Time
Feels
flies.
like forever.
I don't even know.
Seems
Yeah. In a good way, though.
In
right?
a good way. Yeah.
Right.
In a good way.
So yeah, for us, this is kind of like a crossover. And Kyle came up with like what did you call this, Kyle? Because we're doing all central, so it's like the central air.
Yeah, Central AC.
Central AC weeks. Exactly. Yeah. So and we wanted to start with you guys because I think the big question on everybody's mind is, where do the Preds get off just spending all of this money that maybe we didn't know that they had? So far, you guys are really the consensus winner to this point of free agency. And yeah, free agency is not over. You have a little while to go, but the big boys are gone, and it seems like they all went to Nashville. Start there. How are you guys feeling as compared to 2 weeks ago? The difference in this team, the outlook of this team.
I will say that the difference that a week makes in covering the Nashville Predators when July 1st fell in there was huge, because in Nashville, of course, we had heard the rumors, and I'm sure you all had heard the rumors that, the Predators are in on the Steven Stamkos conversation. But had you told anybody, I think in Nashville, that the Predators would have signed Steven Stamkos, they would have been beside themselves. If you would have said the Predators signed Jonathan Marchessault, fans would have been beside themselves. If you would have said Barry Trotz signed Brady Shea to the blue line, Preds fans would have been beside themselves. I do not think anybody in Nashville for a moment anticipated that Barry Trotz would go out and sign all three of those guys and announce it, minutes into free agency. So it has been a crazy, crazy week, doing media, hearing from these guys, and kind of keeping up on what's going on cap wise and everything with the Predators. But I am telling you, it is such an exciting time to follow this team. The city is buzzing about what Barry Trotz did and what this next season could look like. It has been really fun.
It was really stressful for like the first couple minutes, like right when the free agency opened. We were both like kind of had our hair on fire because we're like, oh my gosh, we didn't think this was all going to happen all at once. But yeah, I think it's funny for honestly a couple years now. It seemed like the Predators had always been linked to whatever big name came out on, the free agent market or the trading block, purely because, well, they have the cap space and they have Juuse Saros, who may or may not get traded, who knows. And I think I always, it almost felt like, crying wolf to me, because I heard like, oh, okay, Steven Stamkos, sure, of course they're in on that. Like, I didn't think it was really going to happen. And, it just felt like we were almost getting teased for a couple years now about like, oh, we may be in on this. Like they may be a trade suitor or someone who could sign this big name player, but never thought it would actually happen. And yeah, like Ann said, we went and got 3 of them. So it was a pretty big day.
And I'm curious. This is also the same off season that Derrick Henry left Nashville, and now everybody. I had to. I'm there. I suffered, but you bringing in everybody to Nashville, like literally putting a super team of sorts almost together in Nashville. What is Trotz trying to prove? What are they doing here? Because you see teams like Florida, Colorado, like going the grow from home approach and just building pieces around there. Why this sudden flip in philosophy in Nashville?
Well, I think a big part of it was like we didn't really know what the direction was for this team. It was like we didn't really know what the philosophy was, because it was, okay, we're not going to commit to a rebuild, but we're also not going to full send and become contenders. We're just kind of going to stay in this mushy middle for a while. And, we're going to keep being competitive-ish, where we're going to make the playoffs and then lose. And that was just kind of and I think fans understandably were getting very frustrated with that, where it's like, okay, so what are we doing here? If we're not going to try to win a cup, then let's just tear it down. And I think that Barry Trotz is coming in now and saying, okay, look, we have Philip Forsberg, we have Roman Josi, we now have Juuse Saros as our goaltender for the next 8 years. We're not going to waste these guys while they're in their prime, and we're actually going to like pick a lane. We're going to pick a direction and just run with it, which is the kind of, decisive behavior I think that this franchise and this market hasn't seen yet.
And I think the other thing that Barry Trotz has done is, like Emma said, he's kind of opened this window now, but he hasn't done it at the expense of a later window. He has not lost prospects. Nashville has got a lot of really good prospects in the pipeline that still need a little marinating. So now they're not going to be rushed. He hasn't given up a lot of that draft capital that David Poile kind of gathered up for him before he passed the torch. And so I think what Barry Trotz has done is kind of opened this now window where Nashville's going to have to take some steps forward, but it hasn't been at the expense of, like 5-6 years from now, there's still going to be a team with talent that can go for it again.
Let me ask you about that, because right now I feel like these contracts look good. Fast forward, you said, 5-6 years from now, well, maybe not 5, because the Stamkos one is a 4-year deal. So go 4 years from now. The last year of the Stamkos deal, he'll be what, 38? He'll be 38. Marchessault will be he'll be about 37, 38. Brady Shea, he'll be 30. What does he got here?
4, I think.
30. Okay, so that's not terrible, but so like I know that's looking too far ahead. and you guys just did a great job, and you're probably like, hey, I'm not worried about 5 years from now, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, but it's going to happen at some point. Do you think these contracts are going to age well, or that's just, we'll deal with that, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it?
That I think that goes to Ann's point. If there was nothing in the pipeline coming up to this point, then yeah, I would be a little bit more concerned. And I think, people maybe in the near term are looking at that, making the argument you just did and being like, well, I don't know, like these guys are going to be really old. Some people are saying, all right, the Preds have 2 years to do it. They have 2 years to win a cup and that's it. It's like, okay, not necessarily because
Mhm.
again, they do have, one of the best prospect systems in the league right now, and they didn't have to give any of them up. They still have, like Ann said, a ton of draft capital. They have 2 first round picks next year, 2 second
Wow.
rounds, like 2 or 3 third round. Like they're well
I've got
set
like
up for
8
the
or 9
future.
picks. Yeah.
And I
Wow.
think they have, they have a number of really promising prospects that last year, when it maybe looked like the Predators might be finally committing to that rebuild of like, okay, let's sell everyone. We're going to get rid of Matthias Ekholm. We're going to get rid of Mikael Granlund and Ryan Johansen, Matt Duchene. Sorry, Anne, to bring up Becky. I know that one hurts you. But I think that people were like, okay, finally, at least we're picking a direction. But then it's like, no, we're still going to try to win with what we have. And so that's when I think, a lot of Predators fans really wanted to see, all right, let's bring in the kids. Let's bring up, this youth movement and let's see what we have. And I think the reality is the timelines didn't quite match up that well in that regard. I think that it's not to diminish or disrespect any of the talent in the Predators pipeline right now, but these guys just aren't ready yet. There's no one playing for the Milwaukee Admirals who I think deserves to be on this Predators roster more than anyone who's currently there. And that's just, it's a timing thing. Like Ann said, you just got to marinate a little bit longer. And so I think of the, specifically Stamkos and Marchessault, because they are slightly shorter contracts. I think of them as almost like a stopgap. And like Ann said, it keeps this window open. It absolutely busts the window open a lot sooner than anyone would have expected, but it also helps keep it open for longer.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that makes me the most upset as a Central Division team is watching these moves, these free agency pickups to improve the current state of the Preds. And then you see what's going on in Milwaukee, what you just saw last year, an incredible run, like an incredible team. And that's coming up. And it's just frustrating. You address the future, present, and got rid of the past. And it's just aggravating to see. And you have draft capital. What's that like? Tell me about these picks. What's that like?
Yeah, I just looked it up. You got 2 in the first, 2 in the second, 3 in the third, one of which did belong to the Avalanche. So that's
Thank
7
y'all.
picks. Yeah. That is 7 picks in the first 3 rounds. I mean, I wouldn't expect to hang on to all of them, but still, that's a lot to work with come trade deadline. So you guys are sitting real pretty.
Yeah, it feels, I'm not going to lie to y'all, it feels pretty good right now.
Yeah.
Let us have this, okay?
Yes. No. Can you see the screen is split for a reason? Like up here is feeling kind of nervous, and down there is feeling pretty good. Let's talk about if there's anything else that the Preds have to do for this offseason. And then we'll get into, I know, way too early predictions, maybe not even predictions. We'll just say like expectations. So let's get all of that in, and we'll get our first break in. We'll talk about that after this. All right, let's hear from FanDuel. Everybody here loves sports. We love them so much that we don't want them to stop. But as the playoffs are all over with in hockey and basketball, we get fewer and fewer games, and those sports are not sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All we got to do is open up the app and dream up any bets anytime that we are in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most of your summer with FanDuel. It's the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right. So I want to get into anything else that the Predators need to do, but I just want to ask a really quick question about Stamkos, because did that happen? Was there talk of that before he was officially done with Tampa Bay? because I follow hockey as much as anybody does, and you heard that all you heard from the Stamkos thing was like it could be over in Tampa, but I didn't really hear if it is over here. There's a teams that could be possibility, because I partly think not a lot of people thought it was actually going to happen. And then when it did happen, it was like Predators are there, and then Predators signed him. Did it happen that fast, or was there talk before he officially left that it could be a destination for him?
I know that Barry Trotz and had always said, he's going to be looking for, these big fish. Not necessarily that he's going to go out and get them, but all bets are on the table. And when we heard from Steven Stamkos, he said in his media availability with us, he was talking about, we knew the night before free agency started. We knew June 30th.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay's not happening. And honestly, you heard whispers. I will say we heard whispers in Nashville about like, Trotz might be in on Stamkos. But I don't think anybody in Nashville felt like it wasn't going to get done in Tampa Bay. It just felt like, of course, they're going to get it done. But when it didn't get done, I mean, Nashville was right there. And Barry Trotz was very upfront. And Steven Stamkos even said, like, Barry Trotz was very upfront and said, look, like, here is our list of people that we want to get. Your name is right there. We really want you. And I think that he was probably extremely persistent. And Barry Trotz also, he just does not play a lot of games. Like, he's pretty much a straight shooter. And I think he just kind of laid it out for Stamkos. Like, look, we brought in Ryan O'Reilly. We brought in Gus Nyquist. We brought in Luke Schenn last year. Gus Nyquist had a career season with the Nashville Predators. Stamkos talked about kind of watching from a distance when the Predators went on that 18-game point streak and was like, okay, something is happening here. But I do think that Barry Trotz was right there. I mean, like his hand was knocking on that door the minute it seemed like it could come open. And I think he was very upfront with Stamkos saying, we want you. And, they were fortunate enough to make it happen.
Yeah. There was no bidding wars or anything, it seemed like, for him. It was like Nashville, and that's it. And wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you got, Kyle?
No, and this is kind of coming off of everything we talked about in the first segment about Nashville, praising you guys. Incredible job. Wonderful. Okay, now let's talk about the goalie position. How confident are we there? Like, I know what we have, but do you feel good with that team in front of you? We've seen powerful teams built up, and you just rely. Hey, Colorado did it not too long ago. They won a Stanley Cup with Darcy Kemper. We Predators,
remember.
Oh, yeah. But
we helped you get there.
Is this going to be the weak spot for the Predators, or do you feel confident you can ride? No, really? What if it goes wrong? What do you do? Like, is this a position that you feel confident can ride you through the entire season?
To that, I will say, Juuse Saros is coming off of statistically his worst season of his career this past season. That said, he finished 5th in the Vezina voting. If your worst season is finishing 5th in the Vezina voting, I feel pretty good about that. And I think that he is more than proven that he can, that he is the type of player, the type of goalie that really is the backbone of a team, because for so many years, really up until this year, he had to be the one dragging this team, whether it was into the playoffs or just to wins. He stole this team a lot of games because they didn't have offense, frankly, at all. And even this year, they weren't exactly an offensive powerhouse by any means, but it was, more than they had seen in previous years. And so he didn't have to be the one dragging them, into the fight every single night. But we know that he can do that because he's done it for years. And so I think that, between him and Scott Wedgwood now as his backup, I think Ann and I have talked about this too at Locked On Predators about, how are we... It's just going to be interesting to see now, because one kind of frequent complaint that we've had about Juuse Saros is there is absolutely no need that he needs to be starting as many games as he is.
Right.
Kevin Lankinen had 17 starts last year as the backup. That is nowhere near enough. And I think that now it's like, all right, well, now he's earned his contract. So can we maybe take our foot off the gas a little bit and maybe like kind of do what Dallas was doing with Wedgwood and, you know, kind of rotating him in? It was like every 4 games for Ottinger, something like that. I would feel more comfortable with that. I think all of us would, because we're, you know, knock on all of the wood that we've been pretty lucky that Juuse Saros has not had any significant injuries, considering how much he plays. And so I think that now that he does have that contract done and settled, you know, hopefully maybe they kind of start him a little bit less, get Wedgwood in there a little bit more, and then maybe they can get into like more of a rhythm that way.
What do you think, Ann?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think to have signed Juuse Saros, I know it's an 8-year deal, and people were like, "Oh my goodness!" And he was your biggest trade chip. Aren't you going to trade him to go get, you know, somebody else? But sometimes your most valuable trade chip is your most valuable player. And I don't believe that Steven Stamkos or Jonathan Marchessault or even Brady Shea would have signed with the Nashville Predators if they had not had Juuse Saros under contract, because you bring in a backup goaltender, you bring in a goaltender like Wedgwood, or had Kevin Lankinen stayed, your next man up is Yaroslav Askarov, who is, if you have not seen this young goaltender play in net, like grab a beer and buckle up, because he is a wild
and some Tums.
And sometimes I tell you, no joke, I take Tums when I watch this guy play, because he is just, he's a wild card, and he's got a ton of talent, but he's not NHL ready quite yet. And so I think if you hadn't signed Juuse Saros, none of these other dominoes would have fallen in the right place, I think, for Nashville right now. So Saros, I think, really is kind of the centerpiece for what Barry Trotz was able to do, you know, in free agency.
Yeah. We're in that same boat as far as goalie goes, because Georgiev just plays way too much. And so we can kind of relate to that. And even outside of the goalie position, they're putting a ton of mileage on the stars. Like Cale Makar plays a little bit too much for my liking. And you know, he's playing 27, 28 minutes a night. Like, I don't want him doing that. As much as it's fun to watch him, that you're just, are you burning them out too early? So I think we're kind of in the same boat with the goalie position. But the guy backing up Georgiev, we don't like. I mean, it's going to be Juuse Saros, who is just, he's green as they come. So that is really up in the air for the Avs. So we'll have to just have a wait and see approach, because Georgiev was just up and down last year. Had a very good playoff. So they're kind of just hoping that transports over into this season. We really don't know. But for the Preds, what else do they have to do? I'm on their cap friendly, which is still up, by the way. I thought that was supposed to be down by now.
I know. Every time I click
did I say that out loud?
I hold my breath. I'm like, is it?
Yeah.
I think it's through the end of July, I want to say.
Oh, okay.
It's the nicest thing. I mean, it's the least they could do.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do go to Puckpedia, but you know, it's just a habit just to type in cap friendly.
Yeah.
Either way, again, you're in a better position than the Avs are. It says you're over cap right now just by about $180,000, where the Avs are what, Kyle, 1.4 million, I think, over.
Yeah.
What else do they have to do? Yeah, and climbing maybe. What else do they have to do? How do they clean this up? Is there other moves on the horizon for the Preds?
Yeah, Barry Trotz did say at his media availability on July 1st that, you know, we are going to be looking to make 1 or 2 more moves in terms of, you know, we've made all these additions, but now we need to make some subtractions because we are over the cap. And that's, God, have the Predators ever been over the cap or even close to the cap? It doesn't feel like it, but at least not recently. And so I think they, you know, they're going to look to be moving somebody. And now as far as who that would be,
who's coming to the Avs is what you're about to say, right? Because it just, go ahead.
Who do you want? You want Cody Glass? He scored a hat trick against you guys this year.
You want Sam Girard back?
There are so many people that would want Sam. Like there is a small, passionate Sam Girard contingent in Nashville. Yeah, they cry out for him.
Really?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't feed the Avs fan base. That
Don't.
is literally
Yeah.
There's a couple guys on the Preds roster right now who would just strictly based on, the financial piece would make sense to offload and plug your ears, because I don't like this one either, but Cody Glass is one who kind of looks like the odd man out on offense right now. If you're looking at the blue line, you've got Dante Fabro, who, again, through no fault of his own, really, is kind of just looking like the odd man out at this point, now that they've gone and gotten Shea. And Yossi can play on either side. He doesn't play a side. He's just everywhere. So I think,
Right.
yeah, so like that kind of eliminates the need for Fabro. And so both of those guys that I mentioned, Glass and Fabro, both make, they have one more year, and it's $2.5 million for each of them. And so as much as I think there are guys in Milwaukee, like a Phil Tomasino, for example, who would immensely benefit from a change of scenery, I don't know that Barry Trotz is going to be as aggressive in trying to make those moves happen, because that's not going to move the needle on the salary cap at all. So I think that, he's got to look at maybe moving one of those guys I mentioned. But then again, with the way that this offseason has gone, nothing surprises me anymore. Right. He could be like, oh, we're trading Ryan O'Reilly. And I'd be like, okay, like,
no, don't
sure.
even put that out there.
Yes. The internet has it now. I hesitate to bring him up, but because he played for you guys for a while. He came to Colorado, had lunch and left. And that's Ryan Johansen.
Yes. We have many questions, friends.
So do we.
Go ahead. What's your take on the whole thing? It just seems like he has fallen out of favor with everything right now. And I mean, he's still in Philly, I believe, but they don't really show signs of wanting to even use him for anything. So how are you guys feeling? Because he's part of, Nashville, he was big with you guys for a while.
Yeah, he was vibing, as they say here. He was vibing.
Yes. we were all vibing with Joey. But I think, to, like Ann said, there's that passionate Sam Girard contingent. I mean, with what Ryan Johansen did with this franchise, especially in that, up until obviously he was injured in that 2017 Cup run. I mean, people still, you see out there, whether it's media or anyone, just building like their all-time Predators lineup. I think you saw that a lot last year because it was the 25th anniversary season. So people were looking back and like, okay, like all-time lineup. Ryan Johansen was in every single one of those, which is so funny to see, because now it's like, where is he? I guess Philly, maybe, sort of, but like it's, I don't know. He's getting married this summer, so that's nice for him, I guess. But I don't know if he's playing hockey again. But hey, we'll see. But he was such a big part of this franchise and such an important part of this franchise until he wasn't. And then he just became this massive, and Ann and I joke a lot on our show about how anytime, in Nashville, anytime a contract or a salary starts with an 8, Preds fans get a little twitchy, because it makes them think Ryan Johansen and how much, he underperformed on that contract. And so it's such a fall from grace, I think. And it's interesting to see, like, I'm curious too, what happened in Colorado, because I heard it was maybe some locker room stuff, or he wasn't quite the fan favorite that he was here in Nashville.
I'll let you go. I'll let you start.
Happened?
I'll let you start, Kyle. Go ahead.
I do know Devontae's did call out the locker room about guys that came in here thinking they know how to play hockey, but won't play like the Avalanche system. And then guess what? Those comments about the locker room and guys that come in here disappeared around the trade deadline. It was crazy. I have no idea. And when you would watch Ryjo in like press conferences and like when they would interview him, the look on his face, you could watch it muted and it was loud. You could see that he was here but didn't want to be here and was not having a great grand old time. And when it comes to what we sent out, I know it wasn't damaged goods. I can tell you that.
It's sometimes players don't fit in a system, and it just didn't work. And they needed him to be their second line center because that was a glaring need for them. And the Avs play a fast game. It's a fast sport and the Avs do it very well. And when you're asked to do a lot on this team and be a top 6 guy, he struggled to keep up, and you could see it. So if he was a bottom 6 guy and just needed to go out there and just make sure the dam didn't break, I think he could have done that. And he found his way down there too, on a bottom 6 role and couldn't. Avs are good at bringing guys in that the system that they're in doesn't work, and they bring them in and the Avs system works for them. And this one just didn't. It didn't work. Now the locker room stuff, I don't know. Everybody kind of the Devon Taves comments. Everybody is kind of pointing to, well, we think he's talking about Ryan Johansen. Like, we genuinely don't know. Could it be? It could have been anybody there. But the interesting thing is, like, if there was some locker room dissension, you did see the other side of that too, because they had a whole mothers away game that all the mothers went to. And Josh Manson's mom passed away, like, I think it was like a couple months before that. And Ryan Johansen got t-shirts made for all the moms that it had something on it for Josh Manson's mom. And it was like, okay, well, he's doing that stuff too. Like, so there were good parts of what he did in the locker room as well. Could he have lost it? Could he have lost the locker room? Sure. But so I don't know for a fact if that's who Taves was talking about, but if it was or if it wasn't, it was not working on the ice. And the Avs gave Philly a first-round pick to take him off their hands. They got Sean Walker in the deal, and they said, we'll take Walker, you take Ryan Johansen, take a first-round pick for Walker, and take Ryan Johansen off our hands too. And that's where we're at.
And now you have Casey Middlestat, so you have the number 2 center, and you're all set. So
and we're fine. I mean, it's amazing kind of how the Avs most of the time come out on top of these deals, and they're pretty good at doing that. And I think they tried it, didn't work, so they shipped them out, and now they got Middlestat. So I feel bad for him because he's had a good career, and it just seems that you don't like to see, if it ends, any careers end like that. Up to what he's done to this point. So let's finish things up with, like I said, I don't want to make predictions, way too early for that, but expectations for the Preds. I mean, you guys had a great run to end the season last year that catapulted you into a playoff spot. When that happens, you figure, like, we got to at least do the same thing next year. That's before you even go out and do what you did in free agency. So now, I mean, is it like win the division? Is that definitely on the table for you guys? I would have to think that it's got to be close to that.
Well, now we've still got you guys in Dallas to deal with, so it's not that easy. And that's the thing.
Step aside.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
If Nathan McKinnon could just calm down for a little
slow
bit.
his roll.
Yeah, but no, I think that, and I've been asked this, again, because Barry Trotz just went ham last week. I suddenly am in demand all over Canadian radio now because they need people to talk about the Predators, I guess. But right. That was something I got asked a lot was, what's the expectation now? And, can they win the division? And I'm like, well, I think if it was any other division, I would say yes. This division, frankly, because of you guys and Dallas, and maybe throw Winnipeg in there too, it makes it a lot harder. And so, but that being said, maybe not win the division. I think you got to at least be a 2 or 3 seed in the playoffs. And you need to win a playoff series. My God, that needs to happen because this season, it was brand new. Barry Trotz is new. Andrew Brunette's new. Like, we didn't know what we were going to get. So it was just kind of like, hey, if we even make the playoffs, that's great. And that's just
Right.
house money at this point. Now, the stakes are higher, the expectations are higher. So you got to at least get out of the first round of the playoffs.
Right. And agree.
Yeah, absolutely. They absolutely have to win the first round of the playoffs. You don't add players like Stamkos and Marchessault and Brady Shea and re-sign Juuse Saros for 8 years and not get out of the first round of the playoff. I'm with Emma. It is so frustrating because by dang, y'all, we would really like to win the division. But there you all are. There you all are. And again, Dallas, it's like, at some point you do have to take turns.
Yeah, well, and the funny thing is, like, for Avalanche fans, I think I would agree with this. Like, they have their core locked up. So every offseason, it's just finding like those smaller contracts and not the big, like, sexy signings. And Avalanche Nation kind of feels like, well, what are the Avs doing? They don't need to do much. Like, what do you have to do when you have Cale Makar, when you have Mikko Rantanen, and when you have Nathan McKinnon? That's what all teams want. And I think the Preds went out and kind of did that. So next year, they're not going to have to go out and do all this big spending because they did it this year. So while, it's all about what happens like here and now, what the Avs are doing here and now is not a lot because they set themselves up to be this way. And yeah, like they're going to be super competitive, but I think there's like some people in the Avs fan base that doesn't feel that way because they haven't made a big signing in however many years. Well, you don't need to, and you're going to be near the top of the division again. So I think you guys are right, though. I think it is a much more competitive division, and even the teams that are not going to make the playoffs are better. So I think from top to bottom, it's a much better division. What do you think, Kyle?
And I will just in closing, I'll give a cautionary tale to all Predators fans. Do not buy too much into a huge free agency because Avalanche fans were ready to hoist another cup with the acquisitions of Tomas Tatar, Ryan Johansen, Ross Colton, Miles Wood, and they had to basically flip half of those free agent signings at the trade deadline because things just weren't happening. So, yes, the moves are there. Training camp, preseason, the beginning of the season, I'm curious to see how this works for Nashville because theoretically, on paper, you guys should be locked in for that number 3 in the Central and making some noise and hoping Dallas and Colorado do stumble.
Yeah. I'd be fine if Dallas stumbles all the way down as far as they could go. I don't think
so would we.
We would sleep fine at night.
We can agree on that. Yeah, absolutely. And finally, like in the off season, we both have a player on this Amazon show that's coming out, I think in the fall. Gabe Landeskog is going to be on it for the Avs, and I believe Forsberg is going to be on it for the Preds. And I have to admit it, and maybe some people will be mad at me. Like, I'm a big Philip Forsberg fan. I know he's an Avalanche killer, but he's just a likable guy. And so
first of all, he's like the only one that we have that's an Avalanche killer.
An Avalanche killer. Yeah. Well, you got Ryan O'Reilly now too. So him as well. But I think that's going to be a fun show. And I'm looking forward to Gabe Landeskog and everything that he's gone through being kind of documented. But just Philip Forsberg just looks like a cool dude to hang out with. So I'm kind of looking forward to this show.
He's a cool dude, and it's coming at a great time because I do believe, and Emma, correct me if I'm wrong, they're covering him and his wife through the birth of their first baby.
Oh,
Felix, little Felix Forsberg, who arrived at the end of the season. So it'll be really fun to kind of watch that back. But I love the idea for the show. And I agree with you. I think watching Landeskog and behind the scenes of that storyline, I think that's going to be really interesting.
I'm also going to be watching for myself because I'm just saying at one point during the playoffs, as Phil was leaving the arena, he came up to me and said something to me, and there were cameras following him. So I was like, I feel like I may have made it onto the show. I'm sure they didn't. I'm sure they didn't cut that out or anything. They're like, "Who's this girl? Move."
Have you received a paycheck in the mail? You get any residuals from this? Okay.
I will be. I will have my lawyers on the phone ready to go. If I am, I will get some lawyers, and then I will have them on the phone ready to go.
All right. Well, let's meet up again around when the season starts or the first time that these two play, which I'm not sure when that is. What's up?
And let's have a normal game, for goodness sake. I'm
Yeah.
tired
Oh
of
my
these
God.
crazy, ridiculous games. Let's just have a
Overtime,
normal
2 minute men
game,
on the ice, nonsense.
regulation. Come on.
Yeah,
We remember that game probably a little differently than you do, but I know exactly
much
the one you're
differently.
talking about.
Much differently. All right. Thank you guys for doing this. And like I said, we will definitely be checking in with you guys later on when the season starts. So appreciate it.
Emma, and I want to thank Chris and Kyle for this special crossover conversation today. We're going to join them again in season as the Predators and Avalanche face off. That is going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We'll see you then.